Hey everybody, this is Perch. We continue to go through a bit of an interesting time in comics, and you've been hearing all this on the channel. The part that's a little fascinating to me right now is that I think there are headwinds. I think if you talk to people in comics, and more of the people I talk to in comics are acknowledging that there are headwinds. When I say headwinds, I mean just they're having trouble connecting the comics to the new audience that they want. They recognize that new comic sales are struggling in some cases. It's interesting how the narrative flipped. There's an article on ICV2 that basically says superhero comics are in a creative rut. Who, if anyone, will fly to the rescue? And it's these top two paragraphs that I'm going to read to you, or top three paragraphs, that really indicate that a lot of the messaging that we have been hearing for, I don't know, for a long time was wrong. I mean, it was false. It was patently false. And whether or not people didn't know and just hope for the best, or whether it was one of those, the pandemic was crushing everyone's soul, and so they were trying to be overly optimistic, or whether it was, unfortunately, I think for some, such a deep-rooted desire to quote unquote own the chuds that they said, everything is great. It's like whistling past the graveyard. It was just, a desire to look better than they were. And in a lot of cases, saying something is not working doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean the world's coming to an end. It's actually oftentimes the good call to action to start to, make changes to make life better for yourself. Well, let me read for you these first three paragraphs. It says, after a few fat years during the pandemic, it sure looks like periodical comics are deep into a cyclical downturn, both financially and creatively. January's unit and dollar sales charts are not exactly full of surprises, with various Spider-Man and Batman family titles leading the way, give or take a few stray turtles. Readers, do these books retailers, do these books have fans lathered with excitement? Is everyone or anyone looking forward to upcoming events like Dawn of DC? By the way, in this first paragraph, one correction, we're still going with this story that during the pandemic, comic sales, floppy sales were incredible. Like things were going out as fast as they possibly can. But people have at least started to dig into the numbers and understand that that wasn't exactly the case. And there was a little bit of kind of supply and demand and other things that were happening there. You had kind of this pent up demand to get to comics. You had some retailers happy to be, back in business over ordering. If you talk to those same retailers, they will tell you that a lot of new comics are still sitting on the shelves or sitting in back issue bins from that time period. The publishers may feel like, hey, everything will return to normal, but really, I think it was an illusion. It was that, I think the downturn had always been there. I think the downturn has been coming since 2017, 2018 for a variety of reasons. And so during the pandemic, everything was on fire. Unfortunately, the math doesn't exactly back that up. The only thing that really sells that story is a lot of anecdotal stuff that usually comes down to, well, the retailers were telling us that people were coming into the stores in droves buying comics. But those same retailers were shut down in some cases for weeks or months at a time and weren't seeing people. And so people started returning to the stores. I mean, it bears looking into deeply. And I don't say this from a comics have always sucked kind of standpoint, just that the data we were getting, I think, was very, very misleading. Anyway, the article continues. It says, though hard numbers can be tough to figure, reports are that sales are flat or down, dating as far back as September, outside of the usual manga and kid-oriented material. Whatever graphic novels, webtoons, and media adaptions are doing to expand the top of the market funnel, the perennial market leaders aren't doing much to keep those readers in the pipeline with monthly must reads. Now, to break that sentence down a little bit, it's basically saying, hey, the movies drive interest. Like James Gunn announced there's a Supergirl movie. People run out and buy the Supergirl trade by Tom King. But there's not a path outside of that trade. There's not a, hey, I read this. I think I want to go read more about Supergirl. Let's go, does she have an ongoing series? Let's find out. There's that connection is not made. A movie comes out or a Disney Plus series is announced and people will, hop to the stores to pick it up. But, it's just not, it's not happening like people expect. And that connection, or that lack of being able to make a connection, is one of the problems I've talked about in this channel a lot. Being able to convert this attention into sales is key. And we're not seeing, I'd say we're not seeing it working. Maybe a better way to put it is we're not seeing the strategies to even hope that it would work. Basically, if I were to tell me right now, what are the 5 top strategies that Marvel, DC, Boom, IDW, etc., what are their top 5 strategies to sell floppies, to get people into the store? You'll have a hard time telling me, even if you work for those companies. The biggest is just, we keep doing what we're doing. We're going to put some more events out. We're going to promote these variant covers. Those aren't strategies. Anyway, let me finish up with this article. It says, recent data shows superheroes are about to lose their place as a top-selling category in U.S. comic and graphic novels, something that, frankly, might end up being for good. Frankly, it might end up being good for the medium, but it's going to hurt the direct market that depends on reliable, repeat customers for monthly periodicals. That is true. The article goes on to offer a few culprits for what's wrong. We get a supply and demand mismatch, which is interesting, for sure. It's basically the books that are being produced and the price of these titles are complicated. We get a stale creative process, which in my mind is a little bit of the hardest one to pin down. And I say that for this reason. Yes, I do agree that there's definitely issues creatively with what's going on with comics, for sure. But I would also argue that in addition to there being problems creatively, even the books that everyone agrees are good aren't getting traction. As much as in any front, including the crowdfunding stuff. You see people say, well, this is where comics should be. You're not seeing those comics take over the mainstream. You're seeing, a creator can make a good paycheck, but it's not, none of these things are moving the needle. So creative matters for sure. But, we would see other indicators. Okay. Then we get media saturation. Sure, there's just too much. I talked about that recently. And then the last one is the saddest one. This is where, the writer is stumbling onto, who wrote this actually? It is Rob Salkowitz. And I think he stumbles onto a bunch, and in particular, the supply and the demand mismatch really talks about, do readers have the same money and attention to devote to the hobby as they did when everyone was stuck inside during Zoom meetings? Well, like I said, the challenge with the pandemic numbers, really assessing that, is that we don't have sell-through. And we have the word of retailers that things are going great, but we have a number of factors as to why they might say that have nothing to do with moving comics. And increasingly, if you look at the value, the indicators I look at is, has the price risen? Do we have a supply issue where, there's demand for certain comics that are available, so it's going to jerk the price up? All of these different pieces are important. You don't see that. The pandemic era of comics do not have this scarcity feel in the back market. So all these things suggest that they weren't selling. But anyway, I think that this writer makes some good points. Definitely points out, it says superheroes are about to lose their place. Unfortunately, that happened a few years ago. It's not about it happened. Manga, Scholastic, YA took it. Unless you want to start counting Dog Man and some of this other stuff. It does hurt the direct market. But the part that disappoints me about the article is the last paragraph, which says, or this may be just another passing squall. Despite all the reasons why things may be in trouble, anyone who's been a fan for longer than a decade knows that this is how the business works. There are booms and busts. And basically, history suggests that, everything may turn out just fine. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. The guy's not going total Pollyanna on me, but it is, I think why I'm reacting to this kind of statement is that this has been the problem with a lot of comics. The problem being that, everything will work out just fine. I think that's more often than not, things don't work out just fine. And in fairness, the person does, the writer here notes, hope is not a strategy. That's true. But hope is not. You have to actually come up with some business approaches, some ideas, and we don't have them at the moment. That is a problem. But you know, more than that, I think the takeaway that I have, uh, the takeaway I have is that this is a consequence of a lot of people ignoring real issues with comics because it was too fun to fight. And when I see the retailers may be in trouble, one of the more troubling things that I've seen over the last, I would say, month or two, is I'm seeing more and more people within the quote unquote comics media saying, maybe the direct market should die. Fuck it. Maybe it should die. These were the retailers that, a couple of years ago, a bunch of CG people were saying, fuck all the retailers. They should all die. Not all of them. I'm not saying that was a CG mission statement, but that was a viewpoint that was on a number of live streams. A number of the bigger names said this. And you saw the other side, the Heidi McDonald side, not to pick on her, but you saw the other side going, these people don't care about retailers. These people are, just trying to just hurt all of comedy, just really pushing back on it. Quite frankly, as they should. So it's troubling to me that now I look at some of these same people going, yeah, maybe the direct market should just come to an end. I mean, it's kind of old fashioned. I mean, maybe it should just die. That's weird. And it should be called out in the same vigor and the same, this is not good kind of wording that they called out the others a couple of years ago. The direct market doesn't need to die. Bad shop owners, people who can't run their business certainly are going to, be drummed out. But there's no reason that, all these things have to go away. If you have a compelling product, you have compelling business strategies, you're putting all this stuff out, it can work out just fine. That is a problem. But again, like I was starting to say, I think years of denying that there was a problem is unfortunately a very comic standard thing. You saw it in the 70s with DC. You saw it in the 90s when Marvel went bankrupt. This is unfortunately very much, on brand for comics, which is everything will be okay. Everything's fine. Are you saying there's a problem? Well, you're the problem. Unfortunately, that's very much comics. I think that we're about to see or are seeing or have been seeing the consequence of denying what was happening, of associating anyone who complained with the bad people. Oh, you say comics have a problem? Well, maybe you're a Nazi. It's an exaggeration, but there are people who go at that. I have people that write in, I've read some of those on the air, that say, when you complain about comics, when you criticize something in comics, and bear in mind, I'm not criticizing the race or the gender or the sexuality of characters. I'm not saying that a writer is a piece of shit or anything like that. I'm saying, hey, these guys can't figure out distribution. Price is too high. That's what I say the majority of the time. And I have people, there's somebody recently in the comments is like, you complain about comics and you wonder why people call you a Nazi. Well, maybe you didn't complain about comics. People wouldn't do that. Yeah, that's the attitude that gets us here. That's the attitude that gets us to, everything coming apart. Regardless of who's pointing out problems, the solution is not stick your head in the sand and pretend there are no problems. I think that's obvious. We learned that in kindergarten. Anyway, interesting article. It is on ICV2. I recommend you go check it out. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.